Good morning, everyone. Apologies for the delay in start. We just wanted to make sure that everything and everyone was in place before we get going. Welcome to the Ministry of National Security's Caribbean Trafficking in Persons CariTIP Forum under the theme Strengthening Regional Cooperation to Eliminate Trafficking in Persons, sharing experiences, showcasing progress, and scaling best practices. It will be a day of sharing and understanding and growing. But right before we get into everything, I'd like you all to stand for the playing of the national anthem. Thank you. You may be seated. Once again, good morning to everyone. I am Roxy Nickel, and I will be guiding you through today's program. And today is a significant day because today, July 30, is the UN World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. And their theme is Human Trafficking is Organized Crime and the Exploitation. So today we're going to have several panel discussions, and there will be several themes under those panel discussions where I will give you the overview and turn you over to the various moderators and also the participating partners who will be there. I'd like to say welcome to all those who've traveled here to give of their time and expertise to move us, because we want to go to Tier 1. Yes? We want to go to Tier 1. So if we shared experiences, will get us there and get us off that list so we can continue to do better and save those. So at this point, we're going to go right into it, and I would like to ask to come to the lectern Ambassador Alison Stone-Roof, Chairman of the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security.
Thank you so much, Roxine. I have quite a list of salutations here, but I must do it. My training in the public service tells me that I must do it, so let me go through the list. So Mrs. Carol Palmer, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Science, Energy, Technology and Transport. Ms. and Telecommunications, thank you, P.S. Palmer. Ms. Dion Jennings, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Social Security. We have Ms. Paula Llewellyn, Director of Public Prosecutions. We have Ms. Diane Gordon Harrison, Children's Advocate and the National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons. We have Ms. Anne-Marie Rowe-Mitu, Director of Organizational Development, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, representing Mrs. Marsha Henry Martin, their Permanent Secretary. And we have Mr. Richard Troop, Director, Safety and Security in Schools, representing PS Dr. Kassan Troop, and that's from the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. We have Ms. Mona Lee Gibbs, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, representing Permanent Secretary, Ambassador Sheila Sealy Monteith. And then we have Ms. Jocelyn Hughes, CariCOM Impacts Representative, and other representatives from CariCOM member states. We have the Political and Economic Counselor from the United States Embassy, Mr. George Matthews. Welcome, George. We have CTD, Mr. Michael Morgan, Chief Technical Director, Law Enforcement, Border Security at the Ministry of National Security. We have Ms. Shauna Trowers, also a Chief Technical Director at the Ministry of National Security. I want to welcome all heads of government agencies, members of the Ministry of National Security's team who are here, members of the NATFA-TIP, members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. On behalf of the government of Jamaica and the Ministry of National Security, it is my distinct honor to welcome you all to this important Caribbean Trafficking in Persons Forum. This event forms part of our week of activities in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, the NATFA-TIP. 2025 marks 2 decades of sustained efforts to combat human trafficking through a coordinated multi-agency approach. And this forum is timely, as it is also being held on the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, which is being observed under the theme, Human Trafficking is Organized Crime, End the Exploitation. This aligns with the theme of our forum, which is strengthening regional cooperation to eliminate trafficking in persons, sharing experiences, showcasing progress, and scaling best practices. As we gather today, we do so in the spirit of collaboration, commitment, and as a community with a shared responsibility to combat one of the most heinous crimes of our time, and that is human trafficking. Indeed, the Caribbean region faces unique challenges in addressing human trafficking, which undermines our societies, exploits vulnerable populations, and threatens our very collective security. This forum provides a very vital platform for us to exchange knowledge, strengthen partnerships, and develop innovative strategies to eradicate trafficking in persons across our nations. It also signals Jamaica's continued commitment to regional partnerships in the fight against trafficking in persons. Indeed, we are leaving no one behind in this fight. Ladies and gentlemen, we recognize that ending human trafficking requires a very unified approach to strengthening legal frameworks, enhancing victim support, and increasing awareness within our communities. We are dedicated to working hand in hand with our regional partners, international organizations, and civil society to ensure that justice is served and victims are protected. For every person rescued, we rescue hope. We are aware that worldwide, approximately 27.6 million women, men, and children are subjected to forced labor, generating an estimated US $236 billion in illegal profits annually. In Jamaica, we are faced with several cases of human trafficking. We continue to employ strategies that have yielded many successes in the fight against human trafficking. We have established the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons in 2005, amended the Trafficking in Persons Prevention, Suppression, and Punishment Act to increase the term of imprisonment from 10 years up to a maximum of 30 years. We have secured 16 convictions, rescued over 130 victims, established safe spaces for children, and we've established an office for independent oversight through the appointment of a national rapporteur on trafficking in persons, which is the first of its kind in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to use this opportunity to extend my sincere gratitude to all participants for your dedication and hard work. Your presence here today underscores our shared resolve to eliminate trafficking in persons from our society. I encourage you all to share solutions to combat this scourge. I ask you to ask the challenging questions and, of course, network to create new, important partnerships. Together, we can make our countries safer. Together, let us reaffirm our commitment to safeguarding the rights and dignity of all individuals and to building a safer, more just Caribbean for generations to come. I thank you.
Thank you so much. And following up on what P.S. said, definitely working together and sharing will get us to the area we want to be at. We're moving on to remarks from Mr. George Matthews, Political and Economic Counselor at the United States Embassy. Sir.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by recognizing Ambassador Allison Stone-Roof, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of National Security, and the Chair of NOTFA-TIP. I'd also like to recognize Permanent Secretary Carol Palmer, and ma'am, I hope I get this correct, Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications, Technology, and Transport. Hopefully it was close. And Mrs. Paula Llewellyn, the Director of Public Prosecutions, and Ms. Diane Gordon-Harrison, the Children's Advocate and National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons. Good morning. As you heard, I'm George Matthews, the Political Economic Counselor at U.S. Embassy Kingston, and it's a pleasure to be with you today at this inaugural Caribbean Trafficking in Persons Forum, a timely and important gathering here in the beautiful city of Montego Bay. So I've only just arrived in Jamaica a few days ago. I actually arrived on Friday. I already feel privileged to be part of a mission and a regional partner represents a $6.7 million investment by the United States in strengthening Jamaica's ability to prevent child trafficking, protect victims, and enhance law enforcement coordination and prosecutions. Building on these collaborative efforts, the United States encourages Jamaica to focus its legislative and institutional efforts to strengthen enforcement and the delivery of timely justice for victims of human trafficking. As we confront the many forms of human trafficking, we must also address the often overlooked issue of forced labor. I want to take this opportunity to state that the U.S. government continues to advocate for ethical labor practices, including direct hiring and transparent contracts for Cuban medical personnel, which are essential measures to prevent labor exploitation and uphold fair, dignified working conditions for all. As we mark this milestone and reflect on 20 years of progress, we also look forward with resolve and optimism to what we can achieve together in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean region. Through open dialogue, shared best practices, and strong regional cooperation, we will continue to protect the vulnerable, pursue justice, and move closer to a future free of trafficking in persons. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. And now we will have remarks from Mrs. Diane Gordon Harrison, Children's Advocate and National Rapporteur, the first of her kind on trafficking in persons.
Chairman of today's proceedings, Captain Nicol, Permanent Secretary and Chair of the National Task Force on Trafficking in Persons, Ambassador Stone Roof, other permanent secretaries who are in the room and their representatives, or DPP, Ms. Paula Llewellyn, various members who are representing and from the different ministries, departments, and agencies in Jamaica, including, of course, the full membership of NATFATIP, members of the diplomatic corps and embassies and high commissions, and of course, our CARICOM partners who are present, and in fact, distinguished ladies and gentlemen all, a very pleasant and warm Jamaican good morning to all of you. May I also say happy anniversary to NATFATIP, and you'll forgive me if I'm a little bit nostalgic, because I see two permanent secretaries sitting side by side, the current chair, Ambassador Stone Roof, and the former chair, who I believe was the founding chair of NATFATIP. And so I want to single out Mrs. Carol Palmer, who has joined us for this very significant celebration today. So happy anniversary, NATFATIP. 20 years is no mean feat, and it is worthy to remind us all that the establishment of NATFATIP even predates Jamaica's anti-trafficking legislation. This admirably demonstrates the priority that Jamaica, from as far back as 2005, attached to the need to find solutions and to build an integrated response to the challenge that human trafficking posed to our country then, and in fact continues to pose now. NATFATIP, as you celebrate your 25th, your platinum anniversary, which represents 2 decades of being unbreakable and strong, may you reflect upon your founding principles and use them to strengthen the continued resolve for another 20 years and beyond. Globally, today marks the very significant observance of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. All across the world, anti-trafficking stakeholders collectively pause to reflect, to reassess, and to regroup their individual and collective efforts to fight the scourge of human trafficking. The theme for this year's World Observance is simple, yet powerful. Human trafficking is organized crime. End the exploitation. This theme serves as a global call to action, and it may resonate in different ways depending on where you are in the world or where you're from. But there is a common thread that connects all stakeholders wherever they are, and that is a solemn recognition that human trafficking dehumanizes its victims and robs persons of their dignity and autonomy while enriching the traffickers. It is big business with a high human capital cost. Jamaica and the Caribbean region are no exception. As we gather today at the inaugural Caribbean Trafficking in Persons Forum, CariTIP, let us embrace the opportunity to pursue meaningful integrative dialogue, identify regional strategies that make us stronger together, while examining the gaps in collaboration that may exist, so that we may take action to close those gaps and build a robust model that serves our region well. Let us reflect, not just for today, but even as we return to our respective organizations and countries, on what practices work well and would benefit from being expanded and scaled up. The theme of today's forum of strengthening regional cooperation to eliminate trafficking in persons sharing experiences, showcasing progress, and scaling up best practices is both fitting and timely, and should serve as the guiding force beyond and behind our exchanges throughout the day and as we continue. We acknowledge as a region and as individual sovereign states within the Caribbean that there is much work to do, but there have also been significant achievements over the years. As Jamaica's National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, I can confidently say that Jamaica is fully committed to advancing the work to address human trafficking in all its forms. Also, as the current chair of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons, I know that the Caribbean region is aware of what is required. The region has produced homegrown experts who are sensitized to the nature and scope of the problem and who are committed to putting in the work to reap the success that we hope for and desire. May we all have an enriching forum, that will serve to build regional bridges of best practice, collaboration, and workable solutions that are practical, effective, and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I now ask you to turn your attention to the screen. There is an endorsement video that will be played that was created by the ministry. So please have a look.
Every 30 seconds, someone becomes a victim of human trafficking. But 20 years ago, Jamaica took a stand. We said no to exploitation, no to trafficking, and yes to action.
For 2 decades, the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, CariTIP, has stood as Jamaica's unwavering shield against human trafficking,
protecting the vulnerable, pursuing justice, and empowering change.
But this journey, this impact belongs to all of us. 25 agencies, dozens of partners, one united front.
Each policy written, each victim sheltered, and each trafficker brought to justice is a result of the unwavering dedication of the people behind the NATFA-TIP.
For every person rescued, we rescue hope.
Through strategic partnerships, we've rescued over 130 victims, established safe spaces for children, strengthened legislation, and created a movement that says, not in our country.
We have increased the term of imprisonment from 10 years up to a maximum of 30 years.
Improved our ability to identify and rescue victims of trafficking,
and establish independent oversight through the appointment of a national rapporteur on trafficking in persons, the first of its kind in the region.
But the fight isn't over. The road ahead is long, but because of you,
The officers, nurses and social workers, prosecutors and judges, advocates, and everyday Jamaicans who care, we move forward.
providing shelter, trauma-informed support, and reintegration services to victims.
20 years of purpose,
20 years of partnership,
20 years of protection, prevention, and prosecution that powers change.
we are the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons.
Report it. Stop it. Together, we can stop human trafficking.
And that is our aim, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to introduce our keynote speaker. I see Ma'am's face. Briefly, I'll do it briefly. Paula V. Llewellyn, CDKC, the first woman to serve in this position, graduate of St. Hugh's High School, completed study of law in 1984. In that same year, appointed clerk of court in the St. James Resident Magistrates Court, went on to being promoted to Crown Counsel at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and within 7 years, Ms. Llewellyn was appointed Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. In 2003, she was appointed Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and in May 2008, appointed as Her Majesty's Queen Counsel, well, now KC. Ms. Llewellyn believes that professionalism and excellence must be at the heart of service to her fellow citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker, DPP Paula Llewellyn.
Good morning, everyone. Please permit me to say all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, Monday night, on my way from my office, I received communication from Ambassador Stoneroof asking me to step up to the plate and do my bit on behalf of my country. Ambassador, this is how I look at it. And she asked me to substitute for Dr. Chang, who was unavoidably called away, cannot be here, as the keynote speaker. I really am in the St. Mary's Circuit this week before the Chief Justice and another judge. I think everybody knows that I'll be stepping down from being DPP in mid-September. So I have been going to the different courts to be with my staff in the trenches. But this subject of human trafficking is also dear to my heart. And Mrs. Palmer, Mr. Berry, and to all the distinguished persons here. I had an experience about a month and a half ago where I was in the Trelawney Circuit for 2 or 3 days. So I was staying at a hotel. And I went for my morning walk, and I heard, Madam DPP. I looked around, I saw a young lady looking like one of the chefs with a trolley in front of her. So I said, me? She said, yes. Don't you remember me? I said, from where? I am, and she called her name. I am one of the first human trafficking victims where the matter was prosecuted in court. So, of course, I paused. I speak of Mrs. Palmer, Miss Mikanje. And I spent about 15 minutes with her. She was updating me on her life. She has done so well. She was originally from Haiti, and she was trafficked to Jamaica at 14. And it was labor exploitation. The fisherman, who was fluent in Haitian Creole, took her to Jamaica, promised her parents, who were very, very poor, that he would have seen to her education. Took her to his home and had her there in human bondage, slavery, looking after his 5 children. When she became about 16, he then raped her. And it was then that she really, knowing a little bit more English, she was able to reach out. She ran away, I think, and she reached out to an adult and told them of her plight. Well, Mrs. Carol Palmer and my then deputy, who was in charge of the Human Trafficking and Sexual Offences Unit at the Office of the DPP, and I know Mr. Berry from CTOC, who was in charge of human trafficking investigation. And NAFTA-TIP also. Everybody combined to make sure that she not only received an excellent education in Jamaica, she was well looked after, well housed, and then she did a certification to become a chef. And Mrs. Palmer, when she said to me, she said, Miss Llewellyn, and I'm getting married next year. The way that I went on, although I was in my gym clothes, don't look at the size, I still try. I went on as if I was going to be a prospective bridesmaid at that wedding. And believe you me, it made my day, it made my week. So when you say that for every person rescued, we rescue hope, I was privileged to have seen hope on that young lady's face and to see the result of the care from all the authorities. Spearheaded, and I'm glad that Mrs. Palmer is here and Mr. Berry. I'm sorry Mrs. Palmer Hamilton is not here, because when I was asked to give the feature address, I am going to, in the brief time allowed, and I say it with the very greatest of respect to all the other agencies and the National Rapporteur too, to take you into a glimpse of our world as prosecutors and investigators. Because for a lot of agencies, and I say this worldwide, when it comes to human trafficking, if one is not careful in terms of continuing to have that commitment to being in the trenches, to be up close to the victims and to do what you can do, sometimes we get so caught up trying to get from tier 3 to tier 2 to tier 1 to come off the ranking system that we become immersed in statistics. So I'm here to take you a little bit into our world, because it is the investigators and the prosecutors who have that first contact with the victims of human trafficking. And thank God that when it is that nationally the governing authorities realized that we had to find a way to come off tier 3 and to leave it, we had an extraordinarily dynamic permanent secretary who I have to call her a gladiator. Ambassador, she's a gladiator, Mrs. Palmer. And we had Mr. Berry, and we had a resilient DPP, but even more importantly, I was fortunate to have an extraordinarily committed deputy director in Mrs. Lisa Palmer Hamilton. And this troika of persons, of course with my support, made sure that you had a lot of public education, both internally in the office, because of course, at the office of the DPP, we're accustomed to prosecuting offenses against the person. Yes, we do rape, sexual offenses, but human trafficking had a particular sensitivity and characteristics that meant that we were obliged as prosecutors to make sure that we got very, very special training. Because let me say this, and we all know that at the heart of trafficking, whether it's labor, sexual, or otherwise, this whole issue of slavery and human bondage is as old as recorded history. It is almost part and parcel with the underbelly, the negatives, that part of the human condition that Thomas Hobbes, the French philosopher, calls the wicked, brutish part of us that causes exploitation. And now, exploitation is the DNA of trafficking. But now, on the super information highway, on the fact that we have had an erasure of borders because of the internet, because of social media, because of the dark web, because of the web. What we have now is trafficking being part and parcel of transnational crime, that billions can be made from it. So for law enforcement and prosecuting agencies, it means that we always have to be up to speed in seeking to keep ahead of the traffickers. But I spoke to Mrs. Palmer Hamilton yesterday on the phone, well, last night. And I told her that I was going to have some reflections and to bring everybody a bit into our world. And I asked her to remind me, when I gave her the charge as DPP, that as head of this unit, in fact, it helped to concretize the formation of our sexual offenses, and we added human trafficking expressly when I gave her the charge to make sure that prosecutorially we try to be on the right side of history going forward. She said to me last night on the phone that the first thing she thought of was the fear factor. Because, and I'm sure Mrs. Palmer, who became quite good friends with Mrs. Palmer Hamilton, and Mr. Berry shared this too. It's as if the governing authority, the bureaucracy, the political class, having made the promises and having been brought to book internationally to say Jamaica is at tier 3, looked to us now, and we felt the great burden to come up to speed very quickly and to commence the prosecutions once we had legislation. And here again, in the trenches, when we were looking at the matter, we helped to make recommendations, and Mrs. Palmer was on the ball. I have to salute you, Mrs. Palmer, looking back. You know, I used to tease you, and I say it again, my learned friend. Mrs. Palmer was always on the ball. No matter how you went into the legalese, no matter how complex the recommendations, and I can tell you, we had the recommendations passed into law in short order. And I can see that, well, I know Mrs. Stoneroof. She got me here today to do this. So I know, although she may not be, how should I say, as effervescent as I am, but she's even more dangerous because you don't see her coming in terms of her ability to push through and get what she wants. So I think, Mrs. Palmer, we can truly say that as a chairperson of CariTIP, that it is in good hands with Ambassador Stoneroof. So what we had to grapple with, because remember, and I say this, I'm very happy to meet you, sir, from the United States. Happy to meet you, sir, in terms of the Caribbean leadership in this area. And of course, I'm always, Mrs. Gordon Harrison was a former deputy director. So she knows telepathically and otherwise exactly what the issues are. What the international authorities look for, and of course the government, is results in terms of prosecutions. Now, what confronted us is that not only was it a very new area in criminal practice and procedure, we discovered later that having the issues ventilated before a jury was not the ideal arena. So the first couple of cases that we did, we recognized gaps in the legislation, and we quickly liaised with the PS at Justice, and they were plugged. But let me tell you, to properly prosecute any case, whether it is a murder case, a human trafficking case, or even a road traffic case, you must have cogent credible, reliable, relevant evidentiary material. Now, for trafficking, that commends itself to what we call viva voce evidence. It is not like a fraud case where you can use documentary material to help to buttress the credibility of the victim or the complainant. To prosecute a human trafficking case, it means that your victim/complainant has to give credible, reliable evidence that will allow the prosecution to convince the tribunal of fact that we have proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I'm a member of the International Association of Prosecutors, and I know most of the DPPs in the region, and I can tell you, when you talk to prosecutors, including American prosecutors, if you look at the statistics worldwide, we all have the same challenges. And sir, I welcome you and embrace you to Jamaica, but I'm known for rocking the boat and speaking truth to power. And sometimes I think it's a little disingenuous on the authorities in the States who, notwithstanding the great efforts and the advances that we have made in Jamaica, insist that we remain at tier 2 when we see other persons being put on tier 1 who, if you really check it out, they're not there yet, like how we are in Jamaica. I speak truth to power. I don't have the diplomatic skills of Mrs. Gorner Harrison or Ambassador Stone Roof, which is maybe why they are where they are and I'm where I am. But that is something that I'm going to ask you to turn your attention to. And please feel free to visit my office and to communicate with my team. I believe my head of unit, Mrs. Johnson-Spence. Stand up so that they can see you, Mrs. Johnson-Spence. Mrs. Johnson-Spence is Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and she has taken the baton from Mrs. Millwood Moore, who is now on the bench, who had taken it from Mrs. Palmer Hamilton. But the tradition and culture in the office to be hands-on. In fact, today, though she's here and I'm here, they're having a wonderful, she'll tell you later on the panel discussion, celebration of the efforts being made anti-human trafficking. In the office, people are wearing blue. We have banners. We have statistics going around and other things so that we can educate our team members. And we're a chambers of 58 lawyers. So that will be in the chat for everybody to see. So we take it very, very seriously. But back to what is required. Because as Mrs. Palmer Hamilton and several of us who had to do this matter recognized, the sort of support, medically, psychiatric, and otherwise, that has to be given to a victim of human trafficking, to engage them so that, one, they can go against what I'll call the subtext of the Stockholm Syndrome. Because we are not able to keep all of them engaged for the journey of success to successful prosecution, because you do have a minority of them who really submit to the Stockholm Syndrome and perhaps may, whether for money or because they have come to rely so much on their captor, on the trafficker, that you get them, Mr. Berry will tell you, and Mrs. Palmer too, because Mrs. Palmer was like a prosecutor. You get them, and sometimes, unless you give them very strong support and you engage them, you have advanced witness care where you're in constant communication with them. Sometimes you lose them. So we celebrate every successful prosecution, and I dare say, if you look at our statistics over the last few years, compared to even some of them in America, I he is to say that we're doing pretty well because we have had prosecutions successful in terms of labor, trafficking, and sexual trafficking, and accused persons from every walk of life, from top to bottom, and we have had good convictions. You have to hold their hands throughout the process. You have to meet with them sometimes so that you gain their trust. You have to have enhanced witness care. You have to try not to leave this up to a third person, especially if you are going to be the person prosecuting the case. You have to make sure that you know the strengths and weaknesses of your complainant victim, and somehow you also get to know the strengths and weaknesses of the accused, although the defense attorney has no duty to disclose anything to you. That is where having a good investigator comes in. You have to also know what triggers the victims. So all these things as a prosecutor and an investigator, but certainly as a prosecutor, you have to know. And thereafter, your back has to be broad enough so that your complainant victim knows that so much can she rely on you, even when the trigger or the trauma throughout the case gets to her. She can look at you and know that whether it's a crisis or not, during the entire process, you will carry her, metaphorically, on your back across the River Jordan because you are in it with her. You hear the passion? So that is what is entailed. And I say this because otherwise, most of you in this room only see statistics or pretty pictures on a screen because you're not in the trenches. So every successful prosecution is fought for because sometimes you almost have to fight the complainant and protect her from herself or himself because of this potential Stockholm syndrome where they feel they are in it somehow with their trafficker and they should not rat on him. And the writer Mary Ann Radmacher said that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. And in human trafficking cases, those prosecutions, especially when you can sometimes feel that the complainant may be slipping away from you. I remember the verb, because all the heads of units and their senior staff try to make sure that they themselves prosecute the cases. And I remember having a conversation with Mrs. Johnson Spence, because from time to time, I'll be updated on how we are doing. And she had a matter in Montego Bay and was very, very distressed. I could feel her stress that somehow she was sensing that the complainant was slipping away and there was not enough room in the court calendar to treat the matter as one of urgency. So that is something that the prosecutor also has to deal with and use your emotional intelligence and your people skills also. Because at the end of the day, the case has to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. We can't say that because the international agencies, whether in the Caribbean or otherwise, believe that we need to have more prosecutions, which I gather they say sometimes. And I say it must be persons who don't know anything about prosecutions. Then we need to have 2 or 3 more or 5 more. It doesn't work like that. That is law and order business or CSI. That's what you see on the screen, but that is not real life. And that is why when I talk to prosecutors in America or England or Canada, we share the same experiences. And we despair that sometimes the bureaucrats, they don't get it. That is not CSI or law and order, where everything takes place in half an hour. The offense the offense has been committed, the accused has been caught, the complainant gives her evidence and is cooperating, though a little challenged, and then the judge hears the matter. and the sentence is delivered, and it takes place in half an hour. That's not real life, especially when you're dealing with human trafficking cases. Another big amendment that we recognized had to come, and here again the Ministry of Justice rose to the, stepped up to the plate. We realized that these matters were best left outside of the domain of the jury. Simply because in Jamaica, and I'm going to say this, but I've said it publicly, part of the negatives, we have a rich tradition, vibrant culture, but when it comes to sexual matters, there tends to be an undercurrent of it's just a little sex. After that, I know nothing. So, if you have jurors, and we find in sexual offenses that female jurors tend to be harder. Mrs. Gordon Harrison can bear that out. And Mrs. Johnson Spence. Female jurors tend to be harder on female victims and complainants than the male jurors. So it's an experienced and astute prosecutor who tries to, when you are picking the jurors before they are challenged, to get more men on any matter that even has the slightest sexual overtone. That again is something that career prosecutors would know. So it is really very important for me in my reflections to point out that when this whole, I call it the fight against the scourge, really commenced in earnest in Jamaica, and we had the parent legislation standing alone, you had to have outstanding transformational leadership. And luckily, we had it in the police, at the Ministry of Justice, and certainly at the office of the DPP. So, and of course, ultimately, we now have a rapporteur. And I am not surprised, may I say, Dan, to hear that you are the president of the Caribbean Association. Would have to be. It's Jamaica. With the greatest of respect, sir. But it's Jamaica. We lead. Yes, crime tends to be a little bit ahead of everybody else in the Caribbean. But because of that, we have had to be very innovative. We are ahead in terms of anti-gang prosecutions. We are ahead in terms of the use of plea negotiations, formal and informal. And we are ahead in terms of our use of digital and cybercrimes material to prosecute cases. We are also, I believe, well, yes, we are ahead in terms of human trafficking prosecution. And also the fact that we have a Court of Appeal decision, which it was my pleasure and partial pain to lead in Ronnie Banks. And there I got some of the feeling of that heavy burden and pressure when I took it on. And this was the case dealing with the Haitian young lady who was taken from Haiti by this very controlling man who was fluent in Haitian. And there was a misdirection in it as it related to the rape count. And I really had to fight to get it across the winning line. But in terms of the judge's treatment of trafficking, it brings out, if I do say so myself, that Jamaica's legislation is a model one. There is no gap. And if you want to know about the definition of trafficking and what the courts look for you to be able to make a case, just read the Queen against Ronnie Banks. You can go on the Court of Appeal of Jamaica's website and you will see it. I'm quite proud of it, and so is the judge, because we spoke about it. I mean, he went on and on and on, and he too has presided at first instance over, I think it was our first labor trafficking matter involving somebody of Indian extraction. Two, yes. And there was another one in Clarendon that Mrs. Millwood Moore and Miss McDonald did. And we got a conviction, a husband and wife. But the wife got a suspended sentence, and the husband got 9 years, I think. And these were well-to-do persons of an Indian extraction. So we have been doing quite well, if I do say so myself. But from the U.S. Embassy, I'm sorry, your last name is? Mr. Matthews. I invite you to read that case. And I do not think that you have a Court of Appeal case dealing with trafficking of that nature anywhere else in the Caribbean. So that particular case will be looked on by other persons at first instance for guidance when it comes to the whole issue of human trafficking as a matter of law and what the Court of Appeal is saying. And that came from Jamaica. So again, for the life of me, I don't know what it is. What is it that we need to do further? When I come back to the table, we don't want to rock the table publicly. What it is, why we are being kept on tier 2. But what is most important is that the fight, we never give up. Because as I said it's part and parcel of the negatives of the human condition. We have to embrace this fight. We have to continue to be re-energized. We have to continue to self-motivate. We have to make sure that, as T.D. Jakes, in his popular book, 10 Commandments of you become more anointed as the situation gets worse. Stop seeing the challenges as an enemy. A truly anointed person activates in a time of trouble. So all of us in the different agencies, one, you have to make sure that you resist any urge to work in silo. Two, you have to make sure you resist the urge to have this turf tension. In other words, I want my agency to look better. Or consult. No. Because at the end of the day, all agencies are giving service above self. You have to have, well, what Mrs. Palmer Hamilton, I was there to see it. She had an almost religious zeal in the way that she tackled this entire human trafficking and how she continued to educate the entire office in respect of human trafficking. And she made sure that we all kept abreast of what are the challenges. We collaborated to overcome these challenges. And our office worked very close with Mr. Berry and his team in terms of, in fact, from there was a suspicion of a human trafficking event. Mr. Berry and his team would get in touch with the office and benefit from the consultation and the collaboration. And that still continues, although he's no longer there. So challenges there will be, but I'm here to testify to you that the best way that you can come out like finely tempered steel is to go through challenges, to go through the fire, because the cause is righteous, the cause is good, and we have to make sure that we never give up the fight. So as I close, let me tell you, when you talk about challenges, I remember, I give the joke all the time, I'm in the supermarket, and a gentleman comes up to me, and he says, "Boy, Miss Llewellyn, I just love your smile." I have the open space. I said, "Thank you, sir." Then he stands up there. And I said, "Is there something else?" He said, "Boy, what a way the stress agree with you." So I'm here to tell you that the challenges that you will face, even when you scratch your head to say, why is it that we cannot come off tier 2, has to just put that aside, because you are doing what Mahatma Gandhi says we must do. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. And remember what rescuing, let me say it again, for every person rescued, we rescue hope. So be the change you wish to see in the world. And as the great African-American jazz musician, Duke Ellington of blessed memory said, always remember 2 important rules of life. Rule number 1, don't quit. Rule number 2, always remember rule number 1. So, again I say, no working in silos. Collaborate, consult. All of us go to the apex of making sure that our architecture in Jamaica at every level that deals with the scourge of human trafficking, that we put it in its best format. We continue to think outside the box. We continue to re-energize, reactivate, self-motivate, and public education ad infinitum has to continue long after we are all gone from this earth. Because once you have the human condition, I say it with the greatest of respect to those who will say we're going to neutralize it, totally get rid of it. Because it is part of inhumanity, which has been means that this fight will continue long after we are gone. So make sure that in respect of the agencies that you are in, if it is your time to pass the baton, you pass a baton that you can be proud of, as Mrs. Palmer did, as Mrs. Lisa Palmer Hamilton did, as Mr. Berry did, and as I, when I demit office in mid-September, will do when I pass the baton to my successor. So ladies and gentlemen, should I say, I'm glad to be here to celebrate, along with fellow stakeholders, our continuous fight against human trafficking. And I say to CariTIP, congratulations on 25 years of 20 years of what I'll call resilience. Because in the same way that I've been telling people recently, based on Paula Vanessa Resilient Llewellyn. So in the same way, let's put R for resilience somewhere there underneath CariTIP, because you have to be resilient and you can't give up. The cause is good. Remember that young lady that I saw, and she's now very happy, doing well. In fact, Mrs. Palmer, I didn't detect any Haitian accent. It's pure Jamaican. Very, very Jamaican. And all I remember is her beautiful, bright smile, looking forward to continue to be a contributing, naturalized citizen of Jamaica land. We and she now loves, and looking forward to marrying her soulmate next year. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, DPP. Resilience. And we're continuing to self-motivate, which we will do today and continuing. And I like the quote that you left, stop seeing the challenges as an enemy. So once we start doing that, it will be better for us to push through. So as we talk about public education, we're going to look at an ad. We're going to switch it around. There's an ad that was done for public education. Is that ad ready? So we can have that before we go into the awards.
I'm not allowed to speak for myself. They make all the decisions.
I'm not allowed to go anywhere by myself. They're afraid I'll escape. See how my hand and face bruise up? Them beat me because me say me tired.
I'm only 13, but they said if I work harder, they will allow me to go home.
Me no have no birth paper, no ID. Them take all of my documents, them.
Victims of human trafficking are all around us, and they need our help. Forced labor is one of the many forms of human trafficking. If you see something, say something. Report suspected cases of human trafficking. Call the nearest police station, 119 or 888-PROTECT.
A round of applause for them. We need to stop the scourge. We're going to go right into the awards, and I'm going to ask the DPP, PS, to join me, ma'am, on stage to give out these awards. Now, these awards marking our 20 years of task force work that has been done and the body of work that has been done. There are over 25 entities, but we're recognizing a few this morning, and the plaque says, in recognition of efforts in eliminating trafficking in persons. And this one is being presented to the Ministry of Justice, Victim Services Branch. The next one is being presented to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. The next award is to the Jamaica Constabulary Force Anti-Trafficking in Persons Vice Squad. And this one is being presented to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. The next award is being presented to Child Protection and Family Services Agency. The next one is being presented to the Office of the National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons. The next award is a citation. Allow me to read the citation. This is going to, for exemplary service, visionary leadership, and pioneering efforts in the fight against trafficking in persons. Few individuals have had a profound and enduring impact on Jamaica's anti-trafficking efforts as Mrs. Carol Ann Palmer. Through tireless advocacy, strategic leadership, visionary thinking, and a deep commitment to service, Mrs. Palmer has helped to shape and strengthen Jamaica's response. Her legacy spans all pillars of counter-trafficking, prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnerships, ensuring that systems are not only in place, but also victim-centered, rights-based, and sustainable. Appointed by Cabinet in 2005, Mrs. Palmer served as a chairperson of the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons for over 15 years. In this role, she personified the idea of service above self, dedicating her life's work to the eradication of human trafficking, selflessness, and dedication to serving Jamaica, have accorded her the Order of Distinction Commander Class in 2015. Under her stewardship, the CariTIP achieved several major milestones. In 2012, Mrs. Palmer played a pivotal role in the rescue and safe repatriation of 21 Honduran boys who had been trafficked in Jamaica. She made personal sacrifices to ensure they received essential services and were treated with dignity and care. In 2018, she spearheaded the island-wide Trafficking in Persons Awareness Tour, a collaborative campaign with the U.S. Embassy aimed at sensitizing youth and community leaders. That same year, she received the Pinnacle Award from the U.S. Embassy's Stakeholder Appreciation and Recognition Awards, recognizing her selflessness and exemplary leadership. She led transformative legislative reforms in the Trafficking Persons Prevention, Suppression, and Punishment Act of 2007. Harsher penalties for traffickers, elimination of fines for serious trafficking crimes, allowing judge-alone trials, enabling victims to enforce restitution orders as civil judgments. Mrs. Palmer was instrumental in developing policies and frameworks for victim identification support, advocating for a holistic approach that includes access to medical, psychological, legal, housing, immigration, and economic services. She was instrumental in the establishment of Female Victim Shelter, the establishment of anti-trafficking in persons in high schools. She championed the Child Protection Compact partnership between Jamaica and the United States, which resulted in establishment of child-friendly spaces for victims, for interviewing and assisting child victims of trafficking, the establishment of an online resource library operated by the Office of the National Rapporteur Against Trafficking in Persons, the development of several tools, including a national referral mechanism, screening tool, and child trafficking indicators, and the training and capacity building of law enforcement officers, judges, prosecutors, social workers, educators, and other key anti-trafficking actors. Mrs. Palmer's leadership has galvanized cross-sectorial collaboration, advanced public awareness, and helped to center survivor dignity in every aspect of Jamaica's anti-trafficking response. Today, we honor Mrs. Carol Ann Palmer, not only for what she achieved, but for how she achieved it with courage, compassion, integrity, and a relentless commitment to justice. Her legacy is one of hope, transformation, and unwavering service. it is with deep respect and gratitude we present Mrs. Carol Palmer with this award in recognition of her extraordinary contribution to the national and regional fight against trafficking in person. Her work continues to be a beacon for the future we all strive to build, one where exploitation is replaced with equity and freedom, and every life is safeguarded with dignity. Another round of applause for her, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Ambassador Stone Roof tricked me to get me here. As I was coming down with my son and my CPO, because from I started doing trafficking, and when we had some very dangerous cases, I was assigned a CPO. My son said to me, Mommy, Jamaicans don't get it yet, They still think they can bring a relative from the country, bring them to their house, work them like slaves, but they are just helping them to have a better life. And that told me this morning that the work is not yet over. When I left NATFA-TIP, I had hoped that I had done enough to have made the baton carry forward into life, because you may remember, those of us who were there at the international conference we held, I did say it had to be all of us together. Not NATFA-TIP, not any of the agencies, and not the threat of U.S. tier, let me not say, decline. Maybe that's a better word, that should drive us. But it is the interest in the welfare and safety and security of our people, and not only Jamaicans, but anybody within these shores. And it remains my resolve, and I have left NATFA-TIP, but NATFA-TIP remains in my heart. Trafficking in persons became a part of me long, long ago, when I was told that the Prime Minister wanted me to head the task force. I said, me? What can I do? But as I took the time to learn what the crime was, and as I recognized that so many of us were in denial, I took it on. And I gave it my all. And I'll tell you, I remain committed to safeguarding Jamaicans from being trafficked. So I still do my little things, and I have my grandchildren, and I train them to insulate themselves, whether it's on the network, as the Superintendent Berry has taught me, to keep them away from the dark side of the internet. And I'm telling you, it's a lifelong job for all of us who are interested. So keep the fire blazing and keep the flag flying as we work. And don't worry about the tier rating. Because when I went to the UK and I asked the chief, what are you doing here about trafficking, so I could learn, there was silence because they were doing nothing, but they are tier 1. Thank you very much.
At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a 15-minute coffee break and come right back into beginning our panel discussions.